let's start on our backs. So pillow, bolster, blanket, towel, props, handy. We're gonna at least make it to seat, but we'll start on our backs, something comfy. If you want to use one of those props or both of those props, feel free. Let me just make sure I have my audio set up. And I don't. So this will be better. Yeah. So we'll just make our way to our backs and we'll start there, something comfy. Pay attention to how the breath is filling you and how the breath is nourishing you on the inhale side. On the exhale side, feel into how you are releasing into the surface beneath you. And then let's add just a little pause at the top of the inhale breath. So at the very top of the inhale with the lungs full, we just pause just momentarily, just for a beat, and then drift right back into that exhale side. Give ourselves about 50 more seconds here. And last 10 seconds here, just centering in, paying attention to that little beat of pause right at the top of the breath. When you're ready, let's bring both knees to a bent position first so we get that little bit of neutrality across the hips. And then we'll extend the left leg down the mat. And as the left leg extends down the mat, bring your right knee in towards your torso, hands clasp over the shin or hamstring. And with the left hand, we're gonna add maybe like 15 to 20% more engagement than the right, so that we get just a little pull from that extra energy from the left arm towards midline. And that's what we are going to feel into. And then from that little pull, so this is a nice little activation of the hip capsule, we're gonna go back to that breath that we started with, or that we ended with, I guess, the inhale to full capacity, and then the beat of pause. And then from that little beat of pause, exhaling. So leg or knee coming towards midline with just a little bit of extra energy from the left arm. Big full inhale breath. And then the exhale settles us after that pause. And into, there's likely a lot of sensation here, right? We have that sensation of the inhale as we're taking that expansiveness, and the chest cavity is expanding and creating less space for the hip. And then on that second side, the exhale side, we have that release. And with the extra energy on that left arm, there should be just a little bit more pull into each cycle of release on the exhale breath. Let's go one more cycle through. So full inhale, you feel the chest cavity expand, you get that pause. And then exhale, and we get just that little bit of additional rotation or compression from the interior rotation, internal rotation of that hip. And then we'll release the right leg back down and just let it ground for a moment with the left leg still extended so that you can feel kind of the variance. And then we'll switch positions. Left knee bends, right leg extends. Left thigh in towards the rib cage. Start with that little bit of additional energy from the right arm. So you're just getting that engagement in. And then we go into the breath. Big, deep inhale. Pause at the top. And then exhale. And as you exhale, that extra energy from the right arm pulls the left knee just a little bit closer or a little bit inward into the internal rotation towards the medial line. And we use that space that we've created on the inhale to capture room on the exhale. It's really a delicate balance of the engagement of the right arm. We don't want it to overpower, but we want there to be just a little bit extra more, like 15 to 20%, maybe 10 to 15% extra energy so that each exhale release is a creation of more internal rotation space. And then eventually, when you feel balanced left to right, let's allow the left knee to return. And the right knee will bend to mirror the left. Now let's take our arms out towards cactus here as we just feel the hip girdle settle a little bit. And pick a direction. We'll roll to one side or the other, whatever side feels most ideal. And we'll press up to seat. And from seat, let's take our left heel closest to the body, right leg in front of the left. So we end up in an easy pose. And we're going to grab both of our props. So this is kind of a combination of a lot of different things. The props here can have dual purpose. So we're looking to create some support. We're looking to create some comfort in a forward fold, which we can use the props. The obvious space is right. We just use them as a resting space. We can also elongate at least one of the props, right? The towel blanket, so that it adds a little bit of extra weight on the edges of the thighs. And then you can stack on top of that with either a folded or an unfolded pillow so that we can soften forward into a fold. Ideally, as long as it's comfortable for the body, we can get the elbows or the forearms to rest on the thighs, and we can open up some external hip rotation as we take kind of a rounded, a pretty flexion heavy forward fold. So you can see I turned here so we can get a little bit more of that flexion perspective. And we want chin kind of supported, maybe forehead supported, depending on how you've stacked. But also I'm really using the weight of the shift of weight so that my arms can capture the hips and really work into some external expansiveness. We're clearly being delicate, right? We're really early in class and we've gone right after the hips. But we're also allowing for that breath, inhale, pause, exhale into the release to help our body just guide into its full potential. And we have just 10 more seconds here on this first side. When you're right, we walk the spine back to vertical, and we can just remove those props so that we can switch the leg direction. So right heel comes closest to the body, left leg in front. And then you reset your props. And just before you get into this shape, just acknowledge to yourself that this side may feel vastly different. And if it does, we just adjust. We don't try to get to the mirror of what we did on the first side. We just offer what is available here. So ideally, arms rest on the knees or the thighs, and then we go forward into that flexion space. And the arms, the weight that we may or may not have created out of the blanket prop, it's just about helping to anchor. So we're just trying to anchor the hips as we take the torso into fold. And that anchoring space or that anchoring sensation allows us to create more space. And we have about 30 more seconds here on this second side. And when you're right, we'll drift our spine back up to or towards vertical. Set our props to the side for, actually, let's take this. Let's do our blanket and towel, and we'll just roll that. So we have a prop that has some level of density that we can place under our knees. And this is just a forced bend, right? Oftentimes, I think it's easy to try to go into these seated forward folds without having the bend. I also think it's nice to be reminded that the bend can offer a different expression of the shape. So force the bend, and then we're going to go right into a traditional seated forward fold. And this will be a relatively short, brief stay here. Just checking in on how a forward fold with no posterior chain warm up, right? So you could argue that the last seated cross leg fold was a posterior chain warm up, but even if it was the upper body, and it was also very hip driven. My intention was certainly hip driven. So just feeling into how your posterior chain feels when it is at its full length without the grace of a full warm up or a half warm up. And when you're right, when you're ready, let's Walk our spine back up. To vertical. And then we are going to do something just a little bit different. So your blanket roll is going to get pulled so that it's just under the right knee. And then the left leg is going to fully express itself. So yeah, that's a pretty good. We have a forced bend on the right knee, and the left leg is fully extended. And we're going to go right back into our fold. And again, this is just about experiencing the posterior chain. So now we've offered a little bit of slack, right? Because we have the one knee, but we've also taken out slack on that left side. So how does your body respond to that removing of space from our previous version? And just in case you're thinking, man, this is not the restorative thing that I was promised, in comparison, we would usually spend this first quarter of class with a little bit of standing, a little bit more movement. So in comparison, we'll get there, I promise. And last 10 seconds here on this first side. And as you're right, we walk the spine back to vertical, and we take this over to side two. So the only thing I'll say is if you do have like I have a very soft, fringy end, I'm going to reverse the blanket so that I have a little bit more stability, just because I want to have a nice density to have that left knee bend. And then we'll follow that right out back into our fold. And again, just feel how the body is responding to this level of encouraged / forced asymmetry, and this level of both freedom and restriction along that slack within the posterior chain. And when you feel right, let's walk our spine back to vertical. We'll take that prop out from underneath us. And let's take this prop and kind of make like a U at the top of your mat. So we're looking for like a head cradle, basically. And then we'll grab our other prop, and that's going to come underneath the knees. You can fold that, you can stack that, you can squish that in a way where it offers just a little leg support. And we're headed down. And I really want you to create the sensation of your head being inside this cradle. So the arms coming up and overhead, you can interlace the fingers, you can interlock the wrists, you could grab, you can maybe grab elbows depending on the geometry of your torso. And then relaxing into that head space. So we're actually restricting the anterior and posterior chain, but the sensation of arms overhead is usually felt more restrictiveness across this anterior chain. So pec minor and above. And while we have that restrictiveness of kind of this head donut, think about really relaxing into the heart of the throat. So on our backs here, Annie. Yeah, beautiful. Whenever. And then you just have a blanket kind of wrapped around your head. The biceps are kind of pushing that blanket almost, not necessarily, but almost, so that the blanket itself is muffling the sounds or any sounds that may be around you. And then position so you can kind of think of how you interlock the arms or interconnect the arms in a way where you get this anterior awareness around the front of the shoulders. And if you feel like, oh, I'm not getting that sensation, you may have more room than some of us, you can actively encourage the elbows to press down towards the floor, mat, earth, and maybe even out towards the edges of your room, space, etc. And then drift your attention to your breath. And because of the intensity of the shoulders, we won't be here much longer. Intensity on the shoulders, I guess, better way to say that. And we'll release the arms to T. So palms up, and feel the neck, back of the neck, cervical spine pressing against that blanket, palms up at T. With an exhale, start to turn your nose chin towards the right. And as you do that, roll the left palm down. So thumb reaches up and then rotates down. And then we'll bring the chin back to neutral. As it does so, the left palm returns so that it faces towards the ceiling or sky. And then same thing to the second direction. Head turns towards the left, right palm rolls down. And we return. And we're just going to work back and forth here. So it is a rotation of the head, and rotation is maybe the wrong word. It's a changing of pressure against that blanket, one direction or the other. And then as you do so, you're internally rotating the shoulder in the opposite direction of your head rotation. Head rotates, palm rolls down. And I keep using that word rotate. I'm not really loving it. It's changing of the pressure. That's a better way to say it. We're just feeling the cervical spine or the soft tissue supporting the cervical spine get captured. And then while it's captured, we're rotating the entirety of the arm, really internally rotating the shoulder. And we'll give ourselves about 30 more seconds here, just exploring this sensation of pressure capture along the cervical spine and then internal rotation into that space. And as you're right, we're going to grasp, return to neutral, grasp that blanket, pull it out from underneath us, let the head come all the way to the mat. And tuck your left hand under the small of the back. So palm down, internal rotation again on the shoulder capsule. Right hand is going to go to cactus. And we'll turn the gaze over towards the right. And now this is a real rotation of the cervical spine. And once you land in the rotation, see if you can squeeze that left shoulder down towards the mat. And we breathe. Beautiful. Just that roll and squeeze. And last 30 seconds here on this first side. And as your right head returns to neutral, left palm comes out and comes to cactus, right palm comes face down and slides underneath the small of your back. Gaze turns over towards the left, right shoulder squeezes into that space. We pressurize, I don't know if pressurize is the right word. We energize the right shoulder back. It encourages more of the internal rotation of that shoulder capsule. So there's this man of significant means, and he has like William Randolph Hearst, Batman, Bruce Wayne style wealth, right? Like real wealth that is beyond generational. And so he has access to everything, everyone, right? Enough finances that becomes your reality. He has this library full of untold numbers of books. Last 30 seconds here. And like many humans, even with everything that we've accumulated, he feels like there's something missing. And so he reads a lot of well-known books, well-known authors who have written books about having the answer. When you're right, when you're ready, knees return to neutral. Knees were already at neutral, sorry. Hands come out to cactus. Head returns to neutral. There we go. We had a rotation. And let's take both of our thighs and draw them in towards our torso. Hands come on to the shins or hamstrings and give yourself a nice little reset of a squeeze. And we'll relax there. I think we're gonna roll to one side or the other, press ourselves up to seat, and we're gonna try to create something here. I've never created this before with the prop set that we have, so we'll see if we can do this or not. I feel pretty comfortable with it. We're gonna take our blanket or towel and make that shelf fold size and then hot dog size. So we get a nice little hot dog fold. That's gonna come down with enough room like maybe a third to a quarter of the room at the top of the mat. I'm of course pointing to a place completely covered by a pillow. And so we have that nice space. Then we're gonna take our pillow or bolster and we're gonna put that on the top end. So we end up with kind of a stair stack of 1 level, 2 level, 3 levels. Tailbone's gonna come up against the, or on the mat up against the blanket or towel. And we'll lower ourselves down with an actual capture of the head here. And then arms roll to any position that's palms up. They can be T, cactus, by your side, whatever feels nice. And the thighs can do kind of a similar thing. They can be extended. You can be knees bent. You can be bottoms of the feet together. You could be knees together. Anything that feels like it's supporting the shape. The big kind of thing here is because we're not using something that is solid structurally underneath the head, we can lose the chin benefit. So you want to make sure that you're energizing the head enough that you create separation between the bottom of your chin and your sternum. And that's really going to be the hardest thing. That chin separation, if we were using a block on the top space, would be automatic. But because we're using a softer prop, we just have to have a little bit more consciousness. So just allow the relaxation around a conscious engagement of the cervical spine, keeping the chin and the sternum separated. And we'll fully settle in here. We'll receive the work we've done on the hips and the shoulders, and we'll let the spine settle over these 3 different levels or these 3 tiers of propping, mat included, of course. And just feel each and every inhale fill and nourish. And then see what it feels like to give yourself that pause and then settle back into your exhale. And so this wealthy man with this incredible library starts reading the works of Eckhart Tolle and Wayne Dyer, gets into the Dale Carnegie books. And as he's diving into these works of expression from these people who've found that missing thing, he realizes that he's not getting the full translation, that there are lessons he's learning, he's incorporating into his life, but they're not fully filling in that missing piece. And so because he has unlimited funds, he starts flying these living authors in, and he brings them into his library, and he has their whole collection of work. And he's paid hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for these opportunities. So he's sitting with them and he's asking the questions, the things that he feels like he didn't fully incorporate and understand. And still, it doesn't feel like he's fully captured the essence of their works, in that he still feels like there is something that is missing. Last 50 seconds in this particular shape. And last full breath in this particular shape. Feel that expansiveness. Pause. Exhale and feel your body just melt over the form beneath you. And then we'll bring the knees to a bent position if we have chosen a different space, and let the knees roll to one side or the other so that we can remove both props from underneath us. We'll turn to our backs. And then we're going to roll over onto our bellies. And from our belly, we'll stack the hands for crocodile pose. Take that same cycle of inhale, full, pause, exhale. And then slide your hands wide enough that you can create that little diamond shape, and it's just a place for your ear. And we're going to turn our gaze over towards the right so that you slide your ear into that little diamond. And then we're going to do this differently than we normally would. So half frog, but we're going to do it towards the turn shape. So our right knee is going to lift up. And this allows us to overcome a little bit of a challenge. So as the right knee comes up, there's a desire to bunch up the right side of the body. So now you have your head turned, everything's kind of focused on this compression of the right side. I want you to think about relaxing into the tailbone so that the shape itself elongates from the middle of the body, even though you have the entire right side bunched up. And as that happens, there is a little offset of weight, and that's okay. Where the weight here is kind of more or less resting along the interior of that left side. And that's going to become an anchor. And we kind of need that anchor to lengthen from. So the left side's anchoring into the length, and we're relaxing from the middle and allowing the right side to meet that anchored length of the left. It's a pretty It's subtle, obviously, but it's also very different than what we'd think of as our normal frog. Last 30 seconds here. Again, just relaxing into the tailbone and allowing the passiveness of that relaxation to melt the compressed right side into mirror the left side length. And then when you're right, we're going to extend the leg down the mat and bring our head back to neutral. And you can keep that diamond or you can stack the hands, right? Whatever feels right. If you want to stack the hands, you could do that palm switch just to keep things balanced. And then eventually, we're going to do this to the second side. So hands slide to the width of that diamond. You create that space. Turn the head toward, so the right ear now comes down, the left knee bends. You feel that bunched up left side. And then we relax into the tailbone space. And I probably should have done a better job, but the tailbone space, right, is the end of the link. So everything in between is also relaxing. That is more or less inherent to the necessity of the length. But if you're encouraging the tailbone to relax, it should follow that the middle portion of the tissue is also going to relax into that space and mirror the length of the anchored now right side. So these authors, author after author after author after speaker, who all of these people who have written these extensive works, shared their extensive knowledge of finding their way to this enlightenment, all come through this library. And they all share everything they can with this man. They just pour out their learnings, their teachings. And every time he feels like he gets just a smidge closer to the thing he wants. Last 15 seconds here on side 2. When you feel right, the leg extends, the head returns to neutral. You can keep that diamond or you can stack, whatever feels appropriate. And we're just using this as a transition. We're going to roll straight over onto our backs once again. We have that nice little back space here. Let's take the left and right palm and tuck them underneath the small of the back. So you end up with kind of an internal rotation chicken wing, I guess. And then walk your legs down the mat so that they are to the full length. And then squeeze back, just like we did on the single internal shoulder rotation. Squeeze back into your shoulder, really place the scapula against the mat, and heel toe or heel the feet over to the left side of the mat. So we get just a little bit of offsetness from the upper and lower half of the body. The upper half of the body is staying very neutral, very centered and very anchored. The lower half of the body is taking that walk into length. It likely manifests a pretty good amount of sensation on the front of the right shoulder, anterior shoulder capsule on that right side. and then relax back to neutral. Feel that right shoulder soften. But as it's still, even with the softness there, we want to make sure we're anchoring in the shoulder blades, anchoring maybe in the elbows, anchoring in that shoulder vicinity. And then we walk over to the second side, right side, and we likely feel that manifest on the front of the left shoulder. You can keep walking until and you may need to walk a little bit further. But as long as you're anchored, as long as you're anchoring in that shoulder, in that elbow region, on both sides, we should get a pretty good sensation of expansion there. And we'll return back to neutral when you feel balanced. Release the arms, bring the knees to a bent space. And let those knees start to dynamically rock side to side, just exploring the space that's available to you. Maybe specifically around torso, lateral edge torso space that we created in the half frog, because that's a pretty unique release. So just allowing for exploration, dynamically moving the knees, rotating the lumbar. And then there's going to come a time eventually when we're going to let both knees fall over towards the left and they're going to settle there for a little static twist. Kind of an unwinding of the work we've asked of our body today. So after all of these authors have come in and he's kind of exhausted his library and certainly not his financial capacity, but his capacity to connect with people, he starts thinking, maybe all of these books seem to kind of stem from this yogic philosophy. So, all right, why don't I bring in a yogi? And he brings in a yogi, and the yogi's like teaching him some asana, right? They're going through some movement and getting his body to move a little bit. And he does that for a week, 2 weeks. And he says, I'm kind of bored with the movement. The reason I brought you here is not really to teach me yoga. It's because I want to understand life, the very nature of life itself. And I feel like I'm so close. I've been reading all of these books. And you're right when you're ready. Knees return back to neutral. And then we exhale and let the knees fall over to that second side. And the yogi listens to this and he's in this library, right? And he recognizes that there's a deep attachment to books. And so the yogi says, a book that explains life. Understood. And he says, okay, I'll get you what you need. I have the exact book you're looking for, and I'll get that for you. We have about 30 more seconds here on the second side. And you are right when you are ready. Knees return back to neutral. Awareness drifts within. Ask yourself if there's anything you might want or need before Shavasana. And if there is, offer that. And if you feel like you have everything, just drift into a place where you can appreciate stillness. And so the day comes when this yogi is going to deliver this book. And the excitement in this wealthy man's mind, heart is palpable. And this yogi takes out this old bag and he sets it down and he opens this bag. And as he opens this bag, it's like the leather itself is like dusting. There's like dust particles just pulling off. And he slides out this Amazon package and he rips it open. And from the package, he hands this man the Book of Lost Things, a book written in the 2000s-ish. And this man looks at the yogi and he's like, what is this? This is a novel. It's about a boy and his tales and his life. And the man looks at the yogi and he's like, I want to learn the essence of life. And you brought me a novel. Start to bring some movement to your fingers and your toes, to your wrists and your ankles, up through your arms and into your elbows, into your knees. And the yogi looks at this man and he says, this is an opportunity to experience love and despair and fear and triumph, the hardships and the greatness of life. And experience those emotions within you through the perspective of another. And start to move the neck and the head. Eventually, the hips, the shoulders, and the entirety of the body. And from this movement, we'll transition from the shape we are in to a seat. And in the seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid. Eyes closed. The yogi finishes by saying, what more could you ask for to learn the essence of life than the ability to experience a lifetime in 8 hours? Your next inhale, we'll bring our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself of the value of fiction and see how that awareness alone changes your experience? Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Happy Mother's Day. Love the heck out of you. Have a beautiful rest of your day today. I'll be back tomorrow night to do a little bit of movement, and then we'll recharge again next Sunday. Love the heck out of you. Have a beautiful day. Mwah.